More than 200,000 Syrians have lost their lives in 4+ years of armed conflict. About a quarter of them were Christians. That's according to our ministry partner Paul, who we'll meet later in this report. What began with anti-government protests escalated into a full-scale civil war involving the brutal tactics of Islamic State jihadist militants. Due to the resulting chaos, more than 11 million Syrians have been forced from their homes and displaced, and over 4 million have left the country entirely. Maria and her sister Karima are among those who fled the violence in their homeland to an uncertain but safer situation in Beirut in 2012. They joined their brother Munir in the Lebanese capital, who had left Syria earlier.
We were living near the border of Turkey and Iraq, near the edge of Syria. The Kurds started controlling that place, and it became too dangerous to live in. So our brother told us to come here to Beirut, and he would rent a place for us to live.
It breaks my heart to see what is happening to my nation with all the terrorism and the violence among the people in one of the most beautiful countries.
Maria told me that most of the Christians had left the area where they lived, so they felt they had to get out before things got even worse in their homeland. And as bad as things got in Syria, Karima says it still was hard to leave.
Especially after the death of my parents, and my oldest brother was sick and he died as well. So we lost everything we had there. I cried a lot when we had to leave Syria. It was very difficult. We had hoped that the situation here in Lebanon would be better than that. We now hope to travel to another country and have a stable life.
In spite of all they've had to go through, Karima says their faith in Jesus hasn't wavered.
My faith didn't change. I really like serving God here in Lebanon, and I'm glad my brother is looking after our needs. We'll serve God wherever we go, like Europe or Canada or any other place.
Munir says in the midst of all the death and destruction, many Muslims in Syria and those who have fled to Lebanon are open to the gospel, something he didn't see much of before the war.
I never thought I would see Muslims inside the church holding a Bible. They never did that before in Syria. And now, because of the crisis, they are getting closer to God, the church and the Christians here. Some of the people are coming to the churches to get food, but many others are coming there to know God and Jesus, and I see this as very good. This war has shown the truth about Islam and the violence that is in it. You don't see even one Christian going and bombing themselves. You don't find that in Christianity.
Lots of people are coming to Christ in Syria as well because of what has happened here. We also believe the Lord is opening doors for us. We are doing worship in the church here. God is with us wherever we go.
Many Christians are still in Syria. Some want to stay and others have no choice but to remain. These ladies, who we'll call Mary, Amani, and Rita, came out of the country to meet us at a safe location in Beirut to share their stories of hardship and their determination to serve the Lord in their war-torn country.
The shelling in the Christian areas killed a lot of young men and children, and a lot of Christian homes were damaged by the shelling into the Christian areas. They were focusing on these areas more than the others. We were afraid on Sundays during the services because they used to shell next to the churches.
The ladies told us of how so many have been killed and badly injured in these attacks, including the loss of limbs, and among them, many children.
There is a lot of stress among the people. For example, if one of the family members is outside the house, they are afraid and worried until they come back home. It's a stressful situation.
Rita, her husband, and 2 children were just trying to survive in Damascus in the midst of the brutal war. Her daughter Amani describes what happened to her only sibling, a 24-year-old brother, in August of 2013.
وبسبب هاي الأوضاع وهن عم
My brother was going to his work, and they were shelling innocent people on the streets. A shell fell close to him, and a piece of the shell hit him in the heart.
Several hours later, Amani's parents broke the terrible news to her that her big brother was dead. Amani was very close to him.
First, I was blaming God. Why did this happen? I was praying and asking him why he did this to us, to me. But I have to accept it. They are very evil people, and we can't forgive easily, but we pray for God to give us some peace inside us and patience.
I lost my whole taste of life after my son died. I felt a huge gap inside of me. I'm still numb. It's very tough.
My whole life changed after that. I see sadness everywhere I go. Even in our house, there is sadness.
Amani not only lost a brother and Rita a son, but others that were in their lives have also been taken by the war.
I have lost many relatives, and friends of my son have also died because of the shelling.
Rita wants to stay in her homeland, but is concerned for her daughter's safety. Amani also would like to remain in Syria.
If you would have come to Syria before, you would have seen how it was full of churches and beautiful Christian places, and now it's all gone. It's all destroyed. It's so hard to find hope. I don't blame people for leaving, but I wish the Christians would stay in the country. But I don't blame them for going because everything is destroyed.
It's so sad to see the Christians leaving the area. At one time, we were a Christian country, and it's so sad to see them leaving because of the war.
Amani was encouraged that Christians in other parts of the world were concerned and trying to help them in the midst of their nightmare.
Before meeting you guys, I didn't know there were people who were concerned that much to come all the way here to hear about stories and what we are going through. And that means a lot to us.
Rita is asking for prayer from her brothers and sisters in other nations.
We want peace, peace as it was before. We also want forgiveness for those who have caused all this tragedy for the Syrians.
In the midst of all the conflict and their own struggles and hardships, these ladies are trying to help their fellow Syrians through food and Bible distributions to those who have lost so much. Working with these women in Syria in ministry and to encourage and support them is an evangelist who we'll call Deborah. We also met up with Deborah in Beirut. She says prior to the uprising and then the war, there were about 3 million Christians in the country. About half of them have left, and most of the rest want to leave as well. Deborah adds, tens of thousands of Christians have died in the war since 2011.
This fear has led many other Christians to leave. They have an idea in their minds that the country will become a Muslim country, so they want to immigrate and find another place to live. This has been a Christian land, and if all the Christians leave, all will be lost, gone forever. It won't be Christian anymore. This is a holy land. For example, in my church, some of the main members have left the country. They were the ones building the church. It's sad to see. There were a lot of activities by the Christians before. Lots of meetings, outside speakers were coming in. There were Christian camps, and now all that has stopped.
Deborah and her team are not only distributing food, but Bibles as well, to Christians of all denominations, and to Muslims who ask for God's Word.
We are helping people to know about the gospel. For example, when we give them a Bible with a food portion, we're telling them it's not only about physical hunger, but spiritual hunger as well. When a Muslim comes and asks, we give them a Bible as well and share the gospel with them.
Life is extremely difficult for you there. You have to go through something like 10 checkpoints every day. There's violence, there's all sorts of difficulty. Is it still worth it to stay and to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ there?
There is spiritual work that can be done through the ministry I have. This is giving me a chance to help the people there who are going through worse conditions than me. My psychological state is better than the others, though it's difficult, but better than the people who've lost someone close to them or are in deep depression.
Deborah just barely escaped with her life after passing through one of the many checkpoints in Damascus set up after the country descended into war. Deborah told me how that one of the Muslim soldiers that she didn't know directed her to his line, which was empty, and she found that kind of unusual.
I asked him why he let me pass from his line, and he said, "I don't know, I just want you to pass from this line today."
Just after going through the checkpoint, Deborah was startled by a loud explosion.
Moments after I passed through, I heard a loud noise and a shell fell on a diesel container. It was very obvious that the Lord's hand was on me in that situation. Every morning, I asked the Lord to open the roads for me. The next day, I saw that same soldier at the checkpoint, and I gave him a Bible for his children, and I told him he was the reason nothing happened to me.
Even though Deborah was shaken by that incident, it has not deterred her from continuing her ministry in a war zone. You've been in ministry for more than 25 years. You know a lot of people in the country. Do you feel all that experience, all your contacts, has prepared you for such a difficult time in the history of Syria?
Yes, of course. But in order for me to do that, I needed a lot of experience with people. For example, when I see people suffering, I need to see the story behind the suffering. And that experience over 25 years has helped me be prepared for what is happening now. Because of all the relationships that I already had in the church with Christians and Muslims, that prepared me how to deal with people. I'm told that I have a skill to help people, and then after that, I can share the gospel with them.
This evangelist, who we'll call Paul, also works in Syria, and like Deborah, is often in danger when spreading the gospel. Paul is also a businessman who was very successful working in Syria and other countries in the Middle East. However, his business collapsed in Damascus because of the war, but that hasn't stopped him from doing his ministry in this now broken country. What has been upsetting to Paul is to witness the mass exodus of Christians from his country.
I feel sad because of that, but I can't blame anyone because they each have their own situation. Some leave to protect their children, but it still makes me sad.
While many Christians have left Syria, many new people have come into the evangelical churches.
Our church and others have grown very fast. A lot of people we didn't know are now coming to the church. The majority in our church are new people. This is what's happening.
For many of the Christians who have remained in this war-ravaged country, the attacks against the churches and all the violence have actually had a positive effect on their faith.
The persecution of Christians has made them strong. This is important to the church to sometimes go through difficulties, and the Christians will grow in their faith.
But so many Christians have left or are leaving the Middle East because of militant Muslim groups like ISIS in Iraq and Syria. Many wonder if Christianity will soon be wiped out in countries that have deep Christian roots.
We can't blame God because of what's happening in our country and other countries, because God is good all the time. He has a plan for every person and every country. So we trust God, and that is what is really important.
The two Syrian evangelists I spoke to here in Beirut say with all the violence, destruction, and the death of so many of their fellow citizens have actually caused many of the Christians who remain in Syria to become much more committed to sharing the message of God's love, and actually found that people are much more open to the gospel than they were prior to the war and all the terrorism.
Yes, of course, especially the moderate Muslims, not the extremists. They're more accepting of the Christians, and they're realizing the violent religion that they have.
This is the right time to evangelize. They have so many questions right now about what is happening and about Jesus. Many Muslims are asking questions of the Christians.
Paul believes the Lord still has big things in store for His kingdom in the Middle East, but says this is a difficult time and is thankful for the prayers of God's people around the world.
Your prayers for our countries are making a difference. We know that there are lots of people around the world and in Canada and America praying for Syria and the situation here. You are welcome here anytime in our homes and our hearts.